IT engineers of Reddit, what are some darkest secrets of Silicon Valley that plebeians are unaware of? Way too much of the stuff you rely on is actually beta that got put into production early against the wishes of everybody, but it's too late to take it back. But now they have a name for it. Minimum Viable Product, aka MVP. The old saying, if builders built buildings the way programmers write programs, the first woodpecker to turn up would destroy civilization, is just about spot on. If buildings were built in a week, they would also tumble. Security and forensics guy here. Your data is not secure. No matter how locked down you think you have everything, there's a weak point. If someone, whether it's a hacker, the police or a stalker, decides they want in and they know what they're doing, they will get in. Your only true protection is hoping that no one ever cares enough to put in the work required. That's why I stay boring. Switch it off and on again is the standard answer for everything, and you'll be shocked how effective it is, even for large servers with petabytes of data. Server is down for maintenance basically means just that. We need to restart the server because something isn't working right and we don't know what's causing it nor how to fix it. My father is in this field and I'm currently trying to fight my way in. He told me a story of how at his previous job that dealt in online auctions that at one point they had found a huge SQL vulnerability. They made whoever needed to be aware of it aware of the vulnerability, and then left it at that. For months after he made them aware, he and his buddies would just get on the website every day and drop tables of people's full unencrypted credit card numbers just to see if it still worked. This was 10 plus years ago, but he said the vulnerability was still there when he left. I'm sure it's been abused and patched by now. Shiny, secure. Enable TLS for communication between client and server because clients request TLS, where client hosts both client and server. Okay, so we just need the client to supply the certificate. Just generate one. Doesn't work that way. Generating a random certificate on this machine would mean it's untrusted on the other machine. We really need the client to supply their own. At best we generate one ourselves and tell the client to install it on all the involved machines, otherwise the client just won't accept an untrusted certificate. But that's a bad UX. I don't want to do that. Can't you disable certificate validation or something? Well, technically yes. You would see TLS traffic in Wireshark, but that would defeat the point and leave the system open to the very well-known man in the middle attack. Do it. Some dude, TTE, who probably managed to pass a background check has access to every bit of your personal information, because they may or may not need access to the database that holds it and can run some simple queries. They may even have it without that, because the data is in plain text logs on some internal server they have access to. Depends on the platform, but yeah, you can run a select on a SQL table and get some really personal info. Luckily some DBAs and SQL devs put an encryption on passwords and the like. Still, it's absurd how much of it is in plain text and values. There are precious few engineers that have a clue, and if you've got enough access you can accidentally frick things up in pretty dramatic ways. A guy I worked with 15 years ago accidentally made out router in Maze the best route to anywhere, from anywhere, in the world. It took about a minute before it fell over, and we had to unplug all the peering links before it would even boot. I remember that, at least one of the times it happened. Turns out, propagating BGP routes takes hours. 1. 90% of the time, we're just better at using Google than you are. 2. There is no cloud. It's all just someone else's hard disk drives. 3. The amount of times we wing it far surpasses any time we've actually known exactly what to do to fix your problem. 4. We know when you haven't reset your computer despite you telling us that you have. 5. Unless you use two-factor authentication, your data is basically open season. Even then, two-factor authentication isn't bulletproof. Based on the articles I see each week, apparently everyone is unaware that everything you do is tracked and recorded somewhere. Alternate source. The people who argue with me that they didn't do something, my logs say otherwise. Your medical data is shared between hospital systems using piped separated text that is 50-80% compatible between different vendors. The primary method for sending data to outside physicians and labs is fax. If it's not pipe and carriage return separated, HL7, It's asterisk and tilde separated. EDX12. The former is usually between healthcare providers. The latter is used by other entities such as insurance companies. Not in Silicon Valley, but I do interact with a lot of IT departments for different clients. It surprised me how many of them were not qualified for the job. Their company reshuffled staff from different departments to create the IT team, and there are varying degrees of I don't give a frick to I am woefully overwhelmed. It kinda pee me off then, cause it took me a year and a half to find a job, and I see this is what's filling the positions. Anyway, that was almost a decade ago. Now they just ship the departments to third-party contractors whose staff needs to be retrained every few months because of turnover. Not an engineer, but former ISP tech support here. Nothing gets fixed until there's a critical mass of complaints and lost revenue. Because of this, basically all IT infrastructure everywhere is held together with bubblegum and staples. Also rubber bands, bits of string, scotch tape and hope. Oh, it worked. Didn't expect that. Imagine that, but at a stupid large scale. We're not sure why this hasn't killed us yet, but the LED is green, so we're good. I know you said Silicon Valley, but I'll chime in from Europe. Nobody knows what to do regarding GDPR. Yes, there are measures being put in place by companies, but it's all guesswork, and everyone's crapping themselves in case of a violation. Putting everything important on the cloud is like hiring someone to raise your baby for you and allowing you access to them from time to time. Well, I'm a drunk. There's a greater chance of me not dropping my laptop baby by giving it to you. Foxconn, the primary board producer for Apple and other OEM PC companies, has its own suicide rate separate from China and will imprison employees for being late or not showing up. What do you mean has its own suicide rate? Every company has its own suicide rate if you care to count it that way. Foxconn's is lower than the national average. About 10% of the people in each SV company actually matter and keep the wheels turning. Everyone else just takes up space. As a corollary, being in that 10% makes you no less likely to be fired. I've had a couple IT engineer friends work for a top Silicon Valley company. Both were in their early 30s and married when they took their jobs. Because of SV's rampant youth culture, both guys wound up cheating on their spouses. One got divorced. Another almost divorced but wound up quitting, moving out of California, and committing to his marriage. The female spouses told me that this experience is super common, but hardly talked about outside of SV circles. Tech companies are very hard on young married couples, not intentionally or maliciously, but because the companies demand that their workers be on 24/7 and because there are lots of after-hours functions that are geared toward workers who are young and single. It just isn't a good environment for young married couples or anyone with young kids. Impossible. Women do not exist in Silicon Valley. By that I mean the ration is 10,000 to 1. Literally no company offers the best service possible. The bigger the company, the more likely they optimize everything they do to squeeze the most dollar sign out and be just good enough you're annoyed but can't be bothered to switch to the competition. Also, for any privacy or VPN service, nobody is going to prison for your $5 a month. If they get served with a legal demand, your info will be handed out, even if the actual data is not recorded. Metadata is enough to understand what you were doing. For your information, the value of a VPN is to keep amateur hackers out, not the feds. The feds can get to you if they wanted to, no matter what. If they can shut down the Silk Road and arrest its founder, they can track all the purchases you made on Bitcoin even more easily. The blockchain is public and permanent. There's always someone who has no idea how to do their job, but will call me expecting me to walk them through every single step of what they should know. That senior systems analyst who title doesn't mean crap, but I bet they make 3x as much as I do, yet they still ask, can't you just remote into my server and reconfigure X? IT workforces can be incredibly toxic and highly competitive. Sabotaging someone's project to climb over their ruin is more common than it should be, and a massive ego will take you places. We've lost many good people who'd rather take massive pay cuts to be happy and not angry every day to some other job, and just not care for the abundance of people that can replace them. Happiness is a very small company, where the stakes, the money and the progression chances are lower. Raise the stakes, however, and the knives come out. IE just means optimized. Even in academia they call it IE to get funded, then plot data in Excel and fit a line to it. That's all they do. IE is a buzzword. If it's ugly on the outside, it is ugly on the inside. If a website is crappy and you have trouble using it, don't bother using the website or the company's products. It will end badly sooner than later. Blockchain is just the least efficient database in the world. There are better solutions than blockchain to every problem that blockchain is hyped to solve, except one: buying illegal drugs online. The different pieces of software in most large systems are held together by spit, baling wire, and prayers. If you move any of the bits, the whole thing will fall over. The number of hospitals that have no idea what they're doing when it comes to backing up and securing data would astound you. Doctors and lawyers, they love clicking on attachments from people they don't know. Brings my pee to a boil just thinking about it. Yes, we often can read your email. We won't and don't as a rule, but always make sure you trust those you hire. Avoid wannabe hackers, probably the worst. Disclaimer which I'm putting on all my comments here. I'm not in CS or any of that. I'm a snot-nosed college student. My experience in this regard comes from trying to survive as a standard broke student in the Bay. I'm studying a bit of CS as a secondary subject and, through that I've talked to some industry professionals and have some contacts, but it is not my primary field, and the things I'm saying are amalgamations of what I've heard from those people. With that said, the CS job market in the Valley is going to be fricked very soon. The big companies, like the unholy Apple, Google, Facebook trinity, have choked out or bought out a lot of startups and made startup workloads insane with minimal payoff. Most successful new companies are started by people who already made it big with something else and are basically reorganizing their money, creating the illusion of competition. So, the big giants are the dominant employers by a long shot. The problem with this is that while these companies are still growing and hiring, the rate that they are growing, so like, the double derivative of hiring, is going down, meaning hiring rates are soon going to reach a steadier state. But there is a massive education bubble. CSSE are seen as the safe money making majors at the schools that feed into these companies. Cal, SJSU, Cal Poly, and there are a fuck ton of students basically expecting a job straight out of college. And with cost of living so high, they need it. Companies know this, and know that they'll put up with a lot of abuses, so working conditions have been getting worse. My advice to anyone wanting to do CS, again, as a student, so don't take this too seriously, is either GTF away from the Bay to someplace with less qualified CS people, or do something that applies CS to another field as opposed to doing straight CS. If anyone wants to contradict me, I welcome it. I don't have much credibility here. The people who actually make things work really care about what they're doing. There are some remarkably good people at any of the major tech companies who are doing their damnedest to keep your data safe and keep the systems you use working well. It's kinda weird. There are plenty of creeps, kooks, bullshitters, and con artists in this business, but the people who actually keep stuff running are pretty decent. I've worked in Silicon Valley for a major tech company. I now work in Eastern Massachusetts for a major tech company. Silicon Valley is a very small part of the tech industry. To be honest, most is done outside the USA. Also, when something breaks or there is a bug, it can take a lot of people a lot of time to fix something you might not even notice or ever see. Sometimes the most debilitating things that completely end your ability to work are literally the simplest of issues with the simplest of solutions. And contrary to the rest of the thread, we don't all Google everything 24/7. I tend to only Google error codes, and even then I eventually get to a point where those become ingrained in memory. Imagine a giant bungalow that's falling apart, and there's a construction crew that's rebuilding it at around the same rate at which it is coming down. Now you have a rough picture of what IT does in most, if not all companies. If you report a bug but can't provide step-by-step instructions to reproduce it, it will be disregarded until someone can find precise circumstances in which it occurs. The internet is held together with zip ties and velcro. You know those pictures you see of nice, neat bundles of cable? That ain't what it really looks like. Pretty much the only time that happens is when it's being displayed. 95% of cabling, including for vital runs, is just an Ethernet cable zip tied to random crap along the route. According to my buddy who spent some time out there as a software engineer, substance abuse, Adderall and coke being the two biggest things. Really not even for partying. For staying up and working ungodly hours to meet some kind of deadline. He was pretty surprised by the amount of people that took Adderall like vitamins or had zero shame bumping coke in front of him like it was a totally normal thing. Got all these people saying that they don't actually know anything. It's flat out false. Yes, you're more valuable in the industry because you're capable of learning rather than what you know, but research is a long and drawn out process. You need to not only be able to learn stuff but to be able to commit the concepts behind that learning to memory so you can apply it towards future issues. I refuse to believe that there are that many completely incompetent people running around as admins. Saying we don't actually know anything is a huge disservice to the industry as a whole. At least, I hope it is. Allegedly AOL and advertising.com has a profile based on your IP address that tracks you wherever you go online, based on ads that are clicked or served. Somehow it links to your speaking also, so that if you say American Express 50 times throughout the day, and then turn on your phone and surf Instagram, you will see ads for American Express. Somewhere, all of your browser history is being recorded somewhere online through advertising.com and AOL and is being sorted and massaged, and then targeted ads are being served. Nearly everyone with a net worth over 8 figures buys a lot of envelopes but never mails anything. If you know, you know. They are outsourcing just about everything to India, China and Russia, including source code work that is supposed to be secure. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.